Welcome again, everybody, to the 78th Tri-State Convention. My name is Chris Cipher, and I am an alcoholic. It's because of the grace of a loving God, I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since July 6th of 2005, and for that I'm eternally grateful. I don't have a Tri-State story like Jennifer does. Like she said, I'm her husband. I'm kind of made to come to this. So here I am. But I do have the privilege tonight to introduce y'all to a lady from New Braunfels, Texas. I've known her for several years now, and she has listened and talked me through some of the stuff that life throws at us. She has also, how can I say this from behind the podium, broke it off in me and jerked a knot in it when my selfish and self-centered ways tend to show up. I've come to refer to her as my favorite old-timer. Would you please welcome Glenda R.
I am his favorite old-timer. And because I'm an old-timer, he had to help me up the stairs. My name is Glenda, and I am an alcoholic. And because my name is Glenda, I am known as Glenda the Good Witch. It's Halloween, people. The witch is in the house. Thanks to the committee and all of the people who helped to put this kind of stuff on. I've done this work. I know how hard it is. Thank you for inviting me. It's always a privilege to be asked to do anything for this organization which saved my life and my family's life. I'm just thrilled to be here. I love the theme this year. It's my favorite part of the big book. I love the logo of it. If you don't know where it is and you're new, go find it. It's awesome. Je suis un raconteur, c'est tout. If you don't understand Cajun French, that says, all I am is a storyteller. That's all. That's all I have is my story. And the big book tells me that I should share with you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Well, there's a lot that's going on. There's been some interesting stuff. There's been some boring stuff. There's some stuff I'd rather not talk about. But there's a whole lot of joy and happiness in what my life has become because I am a sober stand-up woman in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's the greatest gift that y'all have ever been able to give me. I guess I need to qualify because, if you're going to stand up at the podium in Alcoholics Anonymous, you ought to let people know if you're an alcoholic. But I'd like to tell you how my journey started, and we'll go from there. It was a Monday. Just an ordinary Monday. It wasn't the day after my birthday, and it wasn't after the 4th of July or after New Year's. It was just a Monday. And I got up about 4 or 4:30, as I did every day at that point in my life. And I had the shakes really, really bad because the alcohol level in my blood had gone down enough to where I was really feeling sick. And so I marched my little behind into the kitchen, and I pulled that box of wine out of that refrigerator, and I had an old cheap plastic cup, had a cover on it. We don't have fancy ones like y'all do now. But it had a cover on it. And I pulled that cup, and I pulled that wine out, and I poured some of that sour white wine from that box into that cup. And I hoped it would stay down. And it did, but it wasn't enough, so I had to do it again. Because I had to get ready to go to work. If you don't have a job, you can't buy the wine in the box. So after drinking enough of that wine, I managed to get dressed, and I drove to work, and I was working at a business college. My job was essentially sales. I don't know what I did that morning. Should have been planning my week. But about 11 o'clock, I realized I wasn't going to be able to make it till 5 o'clock. I was going to have to go home for lunch. And I did. And again, pull that wine out of the refrigerator, pour that wine in that cup. And I said the same prayer then that I had said that morning, which was my prayer for probably 3 or 4 years. And it was, God, I don't want to get drunk today. Please help me not get drunk today. I had no idea it was the wrong prayer. So I drank that wine down and got settled or what. I don't remember driving back to work. And when I got there and I closed the door and sat in my chair in my office, and I know I leaned my head back and I was just going to, maybe a power nap would make me feel better and maybe I could get some work done. And then I hear someone knocking on the door, so I pulled myself together as best I could. And the busybody from upstairs came in my office and asked me some stupid question. And then she left, and I thought, I think that went okay. Okay, now I got to get some work done here. And about that time, she opened the door again and walked in. She didn't knock this time. She closed the door behind her, and she looked at me and she said, "You're drunk. You have a drinking problem." And my world crashed. I knew in that moment my life would never be the same. The reason she could recognize that so simply and easily was because her husband was an alcoholic. Her ex-husband. Let me get that straight. She was a member of Al-Anon. Her ex-husband died 3 months later in the drunk tank in Tangipahoa jail. He aspirated on his own vomit. But she called the other supervisor from upstairs, and they brought me home, and they called my husband, and they called my daughter, and we had a family meeting that afternoon about what are we going to do about Glenda. It was decided that I should go into a treatment center, so we made an appointment. She called. She was extremely helpful. Now, as this is all going on, I'm sitting there, and I'm in shell shock. How does a nice girl like me end up here? How did I get here? And I don't know where here is. I just know it's not what I thought my life was going to be like. So that we make all this plan, and then they all go outside. You know how you got to go outside to finish the private parts of the conversation. And I'm standing at my kitchen sink, and I can see them out there on the driveway. Here's my thought. If I'm going to have a drink, I better get it real fast before they come back in. What are y'all laughing at? Y'all never had a thought like that? I am going into a treatment center for drinking, and all I can think about is, I need another drink. That was Monday. I went into that treatment center on Wednesday, and I was blessed because it was a big book treatment center. They worked out of the big book. And on that Wednesday, in that, that free book, big book that they give you in those treatment centers, I think mine was $17,000 is what I paid for that free big book, but whatever. It really wasn't that much. I'm just kidding. But I took that free big book and I wrote that date in it. I had no idea that date would be significant. Where did that thought come from? I have no idea. And that date was July the 25th, 1989. And so I started working some steps in that treatment center. I was being taken through the steps by a Catholic nun who was an alcoholic. But the fun thing, the great thing that happened early on was, they had this rotation of their methods and all of this business. I was at that point where I'd only been in there maybe 4 or 5 days, and they showed a film. And it showed the effect of alcohol on the human body. And they talk, real scientific stuff. If you drink the alcohol, it's digested by this, and it goes through here, so you got alcohol this over here, and I had no idea what they were talking about. But they said it works differently in some people than it will in most people. There is a physical component to alcoholism. That explained it. That explained what was wrong with me. I think it's real important, especially if you're new here, that you don't look at us and try to figure out what does alcohol look like in our lives and does it match what goes on in your life. You see, I'm a nice Cajun girl from South Louisiana, Acadia Parish. I was raised by loving parents. There was no abuse. There was no neglect. We didn't have a whole lot of money, but I had everything I needed. And I was well educated, and I was taken care of. That isn't everybody's story, but it is mine. My father had TB when I was very, very young, so I actually went to elementary school in Del Rio, Texas. Now, my family spoke Cajun French and everybody else spoke Spanish, but that's okay, you know. We learn we're not all the same. But anyway, so after we left there, we ended up back in Louisiana. I went to high school and graduated from at the time, Catholic Girls' School in Lake Charles. And because I am an overachiever, and because I am compliant, and I do what you ask of me, I got a little scholarship, and I went to McNeese. Did you notice there is no stories in there about my drinking? I didn't drink. I know I had a drink at prom, senior prom. I remember that. That's not everybody's story. That's mine. And so I'm in college now, and I go out with some friends, and they order a pitcher of beer, and I am amazed. You mean beer comes in a pitcher? And then my best friend had a brother, and he was kind of whatever, and I wasn't whatever. And so we would go out from time to time, and his idea, a happy place, was to go to this dive bar over yonder, and we'd listen to Patsy Cline on the jukebox, and we would drink scotch and tonic. You're right, it's nasty. I didn't know any better. But then what happened is I met a man. It happens all the time. He was a little older than I was and very sophisticated, very handsome. And he took me to it was a supper club in Lake Charles. And so we're going to go dinner and dancing at the supper club, and we sit down, he's going to order drinks, and he said, "What do you like to drink?" And I said, "Scotch and tonic," and he looked at me like I'd grown two heads, and he said, "Do you like that?" No. So he said, "Why don't you let me order something that a lot of ladies like?" And I said, "Okay." So he introduced me to Manhattans, Old Fashions, and Martinis. Now, I'm at a supper club in Lake Charles. It's a supper club. I've got a tall stem martini in this hand, my cigarette in that hand, and honey, I had arrived. I married that man. All my friends said, "Don't do it. It'll never last. It'll never work." But because he is part of my story, you need to know that. His name was Ray. We were married almost 59 years. His story, he's not here to tell his version. I'm just going to tell you a snippet of it. He would tell you that when he took his first drink, an alcoholic was born, if he wasn't born alcoholic. That's not my story. That's his story. That's what happened to him. In my case, I drank or I didn't drink. I was busy. I was in college carrying a heavy load. I'm working part-time. Then we get married. Now I'm having babies and running a business. And I drank some. I can't tell you when or how much or whatever. I still did like martinis a lot. Gin martinis. And easy on the vermouth, please. Don't waste it. And I'm sure that there were a few times when I drank too much, because everybody does that, whether they're alcoholic or not. But at some point, and we never could go back and figure out when it was. I'm going to say it was probably in my mid-30-ish, maybe late 30 part in my life. Alcohol began to be different. And now, when I take that drink, I'm not just taking it because he's having one or it's before dinner or we're at a party. I'm doing it because I want a drink. And then it became I need a drink. And so because I didn't drink alcoholically early on, I couldn't figure out what happened to me when I was no longer able to control my drinking. Why is it that I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning and need a drink? Why is it that I would come home from work and, back when he still let me drink gin, because he made me start drinking that wine in the box, he didn't know how fast it went down, and he didn't know how many I had and moved him around, but that's another story. But I could get home and I could take the cap off that gin bottle and I would go, I already felt better. You're shaking your heads. You know what I'm talking about. His story was different. That's mine. I never wrecked cars. I never got arrested. I was married. I lived in the same house for 40 years. Most of that time I was employed. I raised children who are healthy, happy, not real sane sometimes. But anyway, they're good kids. So my life on the outside looks very different than it does for some other people. But I'm in that treatment center, and they show this film, and suddenly that explains why, when I don't want a drink, I need a drink. Or why sometimes when I'm drinking, I can control it and I can stop, and other times I've lost control completely. They also explain those times when I would forget what happened. You're doing something, and all of a sudden it's like you wake up and it's like, what? And they talked about what a blackout was, and I went, that's me. That's me. Now I have an idea of what the problem is. And they said, we got a solution. That's step one. I am powerless over alcohol. Step two, the other half of step one is my life is unmanageable. Well, not necessarily. I was president of the high school PTA for 2 years, for God's sakes. We made enough money in those 2 years to buy the athletic department a 12-passenger van. I can do stuff. I am not unmanageable. And they said I was insane in step two, and I went, I'm not so sure about that. But this Catholic nun was good. We get to step three, and I don't know, we talked about it. I have always believed in God, obviously. I'm praying every day to God. It's just the wrong prayer. But we talked about step three and whatever, and a day or so later, don't ask me why we're outside. It's August in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but that's where we were. We're sitting outside. This is in that third step period of this treatment center, and suddenly I feel as though there is a hand on me, as though there's pressure on my chest. And it's warm and it's comforting, and in that moment, I knew I would be okay. Spiritual experience. I had asked God to take away the desire to drink. It happened that day. It has never returned. So then she said, we're going to do a fourth step. We need to know about resentments. And I said, I don't resent anybody. I'm a nice girl. I like everybody. And she explained what a resentment was, and I said, I'm going to need more paper. So we did it. We did it out of a Hazelden book, but we did a fourth step. We did a fifth step, because you have to do a fifth step where they let you out. Never mind, dummy, they're going to put you out when the money runs out. But I did it because I am compliant. So then I get out, and While I was in there, one other thing that happened is they took me to an outside AA meeting, and it was on Friday night at 8 o'clock. But we go to this meeting, and it's a birthday night, and they're giving a chip to a man, and I can't remember now whether it was 1 year or 2 years, but I knew one thing. Ain't nobody go a year or two without a drink, so they're lying. But they had me because they were roasting that man. They were picking on him unmercifully, and they were laughing, and they were happy, and I was dying. I was hooked. I thought, So when I got out of that treatment center, that's the first meeting I went to that Friday night. And it was my home group for 14 years. They were really good people. They were fun. They ran the gamut from a pediatrician to a diesel mechanic and this wild woman who used to tell tales, and I'd go, ooh, I don't think I'd have said that in public. They introduced me to what life could be like in sobriety. And every Friday night we went to Wendy's. I saw that Wendy's out there and I went, not today. That was my original experience is in Alcoholics Anonymous. I went to some other meetings. Well, what happened is that about 4 or 5 years, that's that first danger period. If you're getting into that, please pay attention. We lose more people in that period of time today than we do in most others. So I'm in that little period right there, and somehow AA's kind of getting old. Because, see, I didn't really do anything else. Those other steps, I worked him off the window shade on the wall. I said, yeah, God, you can take those defects. Oh, yeah, whatever. Amends? Oh, I did a lot of those wrong. And then steps 10 and 11, well, they should have been just one because it's the same thing, right? And then it gets to 12, carry the message. Well, the message I'm carrying is what good stuff you said in the meeting, and I'm going to that meeting over there and repeating it. I'm carrying a message. And I did that for 4 or 5 years. And now I'm dying again. And it's not going to work. And I don't remember if it was James the Taper. You do realize that some of you people don't even know what a cassette tape is. But back in the day, we had cassette tapes. And the taper was called the Taper. Some taper, God bless James, I've known him forever. Y'all go see what he's got over there. He's got cool stuff. But so, oh, there he is. Hey, baby. But so I picked up a set of cassette tapes by Joe Hawk. And Joe was doing a big book study in Santa Monica, California. He was 6 months sober, and it was at the Salvation Army. You can hear the jet planes through the bad. He was talking about this book, this big book, and he talked about it in a way that I'd never heard before. It was like, wow, where did he find that in here? Now, I didn't work or get to talk to, met Joe and saw him a few times here and there. But I found a group of people that did what Joe Hawk was talking about. And I began to want to do sincerely what they were doing. So this is what happened. Step 1, am I powerless over alcohol? Well, I found out that my body was broken. That's the problem. Okay? And then the second half, your life is unmanageable. I told you it isn't. And this kind lady who was taking me through the steps said, turn to page 52. Look at that middle paragraph. It's the bedevilments. We're going to turn them into questions. And she said, for instance, it says, we were having trouble with personal relationships. She said, I don't want to hear that. Here's the way you ask it. Are you having trouble with personal relationships? And the answer is not yes or no. The answer is yes, with my husband, my mother, and my dad, and my children, and my boss, and yes, I'm having trouble with personal relationships. Oh, we can turn these statements into questions. And then she said, the second one is, can you control your emotional nature? Well, I cry at certain movies. Is that what you're talking about? No, let's talk about emotions. How about that flash of anger that you revel in? How about that sadness that you suffer from? How about grief? How about jealousy, lust, greed? These are all emotions. We all have them. Can you control them? Short answer was no. Then one of my favorites says, can you make a living? Well, by this time I was employed. I had a decent job, and I said, yeah, I'm making a living. She said, there's more than one part to that question. Can you make a living? That means financially. Are you able to make enough money to live on? I went, pretty much. All right, the second part of it is, can you live on what you make? Oh. And then she asked me the main question, the one that really got me. But can you make a living? Meaning, can you live big in this life? Can you live from abundance? Or do you live from scarcity? Or how do you approach life? Are you living? And I went, no, I was not. And then the last one is, are you full of fear? Oh, do I look like I'm afraid? Really? And then we talked about fear, and I went, oh, my word. Why did I not know this? I don't know you didn't. And so then we went on to the third step. Well, my first third step was very impactful. The second time I really did it rather than just rote prayer every morning saying the third step prayer. I don't know, like I was told to do. But when I really looked at it this time, that third step prayer was like, wow, what does it say? Relieve me of the bondage of self. Oh, why? So I can bear witness to y'all. Bondage of self. She said, we're going to write inventory. Get a notebook. The big book has 3 columns on one page. I always thought that was the end of it. She said, you really need to read this book. There's 4 columns. And she taught me a way to do it in a notebook that I still use today. And if you're interested in how that works, come see me anytime. I'll be happy to go over it with you. But so I wrote down the resentments I had, those that I still had from way back then. I mean, I was married to the same man for a very long time. I have 3 children. But then she also, besides those, I had new ones that had happened. I was employed. Hello. I was also a boss. Hello. So I wrote down new resentments. And she said, list them straight down. Just go down and list them. Do not go further than that. I did what I was told. Then we go to column 2. She said, this is the bitch column. You get to tell me, write it down, everything those people did to you. Because it's the last time you're going to write it down. That was different. So I did. And I wrote down a lot of stuff that before this I would have been ashamed and embarrassed to have written about how I felt about that and the things that I thought that they did to me. And then we looked at the third column and how does it affect me? Well, I just wanted y'all to like me, and people talked about being a people pleaser. I said, no, I'm just kind to people. And she said, all these people you're trying to please, how pleased are they with you? Oh. So we looked at what those defects were. What does this affect? How does this apply in my life? What are these fears that I have today? Are they different than what I had before? How are they operating in me today? And then we went to column 4. And if you're new and you got to find column 4, we have to turn a couple of pages. And it says, where was I wrong? That's so hard to say. And what should I have done instead? And that's column 4. It's in here. I didn't know that. I didn't find it. She was helping me see how this would work. So we did inventory. And then she said, okay, now we're going to talk about step 6 and 7. Well, remember, I'd read them off the wall. Yeah, God, take away those defects. Yeah. Do it. And then she said, but whoa, really? What, do you really want to give these up? And we had to look at what I had listed that didn't work in my life and decide, like that little burst of anger I got periodically that empowered me and made me feel like I am queen of the world, baby. Or what about those fears? Now I began to understand exactly how destructive they were. And I had to say, okay, am I really ready to let God take that from me? What will I end up being? I thought that would change my personality. And I knew that was a good thing, because I knew that what God needed to do was to make me kind and loving and gentle. I was too brash, too aggressive. I'm just going to say this. I have been told that I have brass balls. And I knew that if God would take all that away, I'd just be fine. And she said, that's not how this is going to work. And then we went to step 7. And there's a prayer that we say. And it says, take from me, God, everything that doesn't work for you today. Oh, I don't get to tell God what to do. No, dear, you don't. God will decide. Well, guess what? He left me pushy, abrasive. Oh, did y'all know that sarcasm is a character defect? I just found that out the other day. I probably owe about a bazillion amends. But now I'm looking at step 7 and I'm saying, okay, God, I need for you to decide what works for you and what doesn't. Sometimes you need a pushy old broad. And sometimes you need me to be quiet and still. My problem was I never knew when and how. And oh, that's what step 6 and 7 means. Who knew? Make a list of people you've harmed. Ooh, we did. Now go make amends. Well, like I told you, I'd made some that were pretty bad. See, when I was drinking real heavily and I couldn't manage my money, I mean, wine in a box was cheap, but nevertheless, I couldn't manage it well. And there were times when I had to call my dad and beg for I'm 38, 40 years old, whatever. I'm calling my daddy to ask for money. I am so eaten up with guilt and shame about all of that. I got out of a treatment center, and I'm sure 3-4 weeks later, I go to my daddy, and I'm going to straighten this out, because I am so eaten up with guilt and shame, and it's just awful, and the shame and the guilt. Oh, you know what happens. So I go to my daddy, and I say, Daddy, my sweet little Cajun daddy, and I say, Daddy, I am going to pay you back every dollar you loaned me. And he looked at me, and he said, with what? I knew then I had done it wrong, but I didn't know why until I'm going through the steps differently. I never could go back and say words that could take that away. But I made amends to my mom and my dad in a very different way. I took care of them at the end of their lives. I helped my mother go see Jesus. It was amazing. My dad was murdered. I took over everything that he had that needed to be done. And I did that because I was a stand-up woman in Alcoholics Anonymous. And God needed a pushy old broad to take care of that. But that's how I made amends there. And the others were, I went and told them I was wrong. Whatever I had left or whatever I'd done since or whatever, I did it. It was freedom. I no longer had to turn down the aisle in the grocery store and go the other way because somebody was coming. I no longer had to hide from the world. I could look you in the eye. Okay, so now we're going to talk about step 10. Well, that was real easy. And she said, I'm not so sure you've got the right idea about that one. And I said, okay, but it says, no, it says it's a spot inventory. Okay? It means that if you do something that's not, you got to take care of it right now. You're not going to wait till tonight. That's 11th step, but I'm reading ahead. In 10th step, you're going to take care of it right now. I'm going to give you a story about a 10th step that jumped right all over me. I had a woman in Baton Rouge that I had taken her through the steps at least twice, and I don't know if I was her sponsor or not, it really didn't matter. But she was sponsoring some girls, and she wanted to do a big book weekend. That was just kind of what we did a lot. And she wanted me to do it, and with her, and I had some young people and some whatever, and I said, okay, we'll do it. I have 8 chairs around my dining room table. We'll get 8 of us together. We start on Friday night at 7 o'clock. We do steps 1, 2, 3. We get up Saturday morning. We write inventory. By Saturday afternoon, we're making amends. By Sunday, we've done, and okay. We've done this before, she and I. I'm just going to call her Ann. That's not her real name. You know that. But so we're here all sitting around the table, and we get to the 3rd step. It's Friday night. And I don't know what I said, but it didn't sit right with her. And she began to help me to understand it a different way. Okay, so we're discussing it, and now she's telling me, okay, that little spurt of anger just flew all over me. You come into my house, you ask me to do this, and now you're going to argue with me about, this is the same stuff we have talked about multiple times. Why are we? And then I looked up, and there's all those other sets of eyes around that table, and they are panicking. I was wrong, and I knew it, and I shut it down as calmly and as gently as I could. Now, it's a 10th step. Okay? They go home. It's 9, 10 o'clock, whatever. I live with a man who works probably a better program than I ever did. And so it says in the 10th step, what do? We continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. I'm resenting the hell out of this girl, Ann. Okay. I'm also very selfish because I know I'm right. I am so self-absorbed. And it's just, okay, so the next line says, when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. That moment happened when I looked around that table and saw those other women and how they were upset with this. They were frightened. They didn't know what was coming next. And at that moment, God spoke to me and said, shut this stuff down. Get back to your purpose. That was the second part. The third part says we discuss it with someone immediately. Well, it's 10:30 at night. My sponsor's asleep. Trust me. I go in and I talk to my husband. He's in recovery. Incidentally, I had 5 days more than him. But he worked an amazing program, and I go in and I say, Ray, guess what? And he said, she did it to you again, didn't she? And I went, damn. But we talked about it. There it is. You talk to somebody immediately. Okay? And then you make amends quickly. Well, again, God stepped in, and I said, quickly, okay, you got it. And then we turn our thoughts to the others we can help. So the next morning, on Saturday morning, the girls get there, and we do our stuff and whatever. And when we get to the 9th step that Saturday afternoon, it's when I shut everything down and I said, I need to make an amends to you all. There it is. That's 10th step. I'd never done it that way until my friend helped me do it. Therefore, I was able to do it in a very stressful situation. I had been trained, and I knew exactly what to do. And that's step 10. It's about me and what I got to do. And then she said, let's talk about step 11. You got discipline in step 11. When you go to bed tonight, now you're going to review your day. How did I do today, God? I know I have a friend who, every one of those questions, he has a little book with them all written out. Every night he handwrites answers, and I'm not doing that. I'm not lying to you. But every night I do, I review my day, and I ask God, how'd I do today? Some days it's pretty good, and some days I go, okay, we'll try better tomorrow, and I go to sleep. And then in the morning, the first thing I do is I thank God, first of all, for waking me up, and then secondly, for the amazing life that I have been given here. And then all these directions are right here in this step 11. I mean, they're just written down. You just got to do it. So step 11 is about my connection to God. It's not about me. Step 10 is about me and what I got to do. Step 11 is about my connection to this God of my understanding that did what I asked him to do. He took away my desire to drink 36 years ago. It has never come back. He has also helped me to live a life beyond anything I ever thought I would ever have. And so, so now we get to step 12. Well, there's 3 parts. Have you had a spiritual awakening? Yeah, I had one. Had that in treatment. Step 3. Have you had any more? Oh, Big Book says we're going to have multiples of experiences. Oh, and I began to think back, and I could find lots of times when I had an experience, a spiritual experience. And some of them were spirit-filled in the rooms, and some of them were, when my granddaughter, my oldest grandchild, my granddaughter was born, believe me, it was a spiritual experience. I never dreamed that I would be allowed near my grandchildren because of my drinking. And when I was asked, do you want to come in the room for my C-section? My daughter said, I went, nope, but I'll be right here. I'll help catch the baby. That's a spiritual experience. What about helping my mother leave this earth and go? That was spiritual. What about all... I can look at that and I can say, yes, in step 12, the first part fits. It fits very well. So having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, I've done them. We try to carry this message to alcohol. What message? It's this message. It's not mine. Because if I don't come from here, I don't have anything to stand on. Then I am not solid. I'm in my head, and you don't want that. So it's this message. And can I do that? It's not parroting what I hear over here that sounds so good and go try to look good over here. And it's not pretending. And it's not, me telling Jennifer, you need to do this if I'm not willing to do it. And so all of these things, okay, I have to carry, carry this message. And I do it by the way I'm built. I do it by the way I act. I do it by all of these things. I do it by whether or not I am kind, most of the time, loving, gentle, all the things I wanted to be. And then I have to practice these principles. What principles? Well, there are 12 of them. They're called steps. And then we got another 12 of them. They're called traditions. And then there's another 12 that I'm not even going to talk about, and that's concepts, and they bore me to tears. But I'll tell you what, those traditions have saved my life. They've saved it in personal relationships, and they have saved it in Alcoholics Anonymous. Not too long ago, I had this bright idea. I love doing Big Book studies. It's my happy place. And so I thought, we have a clubhouse, kind of like your koala club or whatever, and we have, 22 meetings a week there or whatever. We had a Big Book study, and we had some other things, but we didn't have anything meaningful, to my mind, at noon. And I thought, I don't really want to do just a Big Book study. I want to do something different. So I had a thought. I'll call it a Big Book step meeting. And I'll read from the Big Book for about 20, 30 minutes and talk about my experiences with whatever I'm reading here. We'll do it for a little bit. We'll see what happens. And then after that, then we'll open the floor and be open discussion about what we just read about. I don't know if it's going to work or not. We'll see. I'm willing to try this. It worked. It lasted over a year. We did the entire Big Book to page 164, and then we did the 12 traditions. And I never dreamed it would happen. Here's what's funny. since I didn't want to ask I'd had to go to the home group, and it was a thing. So I went to the chairman of our group, our home group, a sweet man called William, and I said, what would you think about this? And I explained what I wanted to do, and I said, do you think I should bring it to the group and whatever? And William's a very quiet man. And he just kind of looked off in the distance for a minute, and he said, I don't mind asking forgiveness instead of permission. I did it. And I did it. It was awesome. I got to do something that I absolutely loved. I got to carry this message in a way that I'd never done before. And it became the biggest meeting in our clubhouse. And I'm not saying that, well, I am proud. It was fun. But the thing that happened was I was able to share my experience, just like I'm doing here tonight, with people who never had been exposed to this. Our clubhouse does not do a lot of that. This is why I was raised up doing this. And it was fascinating. It was amazing. So what is life like for me today? I lost my husband about 4 years ago. I've had to learn to live alone. It's not all bad. If I decide I'm going to the grocery store right now, I can put my shoes on and go, and I don't have to wait for anybody. And I can decide if a grilled cheese sandwich sounds really good for supper. He had been ill for a while, but he was an amazing man, and he was very, very involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. If any of you knew him, you were blessed. But now he's gone, and my life is different. I have grown grandchildren who have never seen me drunk. They have all been to at least one AA meeting. I have 2 of the world's most gorgeous great-grandchildren. So I go to meetings. I carry this message. I sponsor women. One is here tonight. Her daughter is here from Virginia. And we're breaking the chain. Her daughter is almost 6 months sober. I get up every morning, and I pray, and I read I call them my God books, all those little meditation books. I say prayers, whatever it is that can connect me to this God of my understanding early in the morning before I'll walk out butt first and mind behind. And so it's important that I have that time. And then during the day, I do what I do, whatever. And then at night, same thing. I go to meetings when I can. I'm not committed to any right now. I was tired. I did it for a whole year. Just one every Monday at noon was tough. I'm taking a little breather right there. But I'm thrilled to be here because I love seeing all you wonderful faces and people I'd never met. And some of you I had talked to on the phone. And some of you I think I know already because Jennifer and I talk a lot. And her sweet husband, Chris. I'm his favorite. Did you hear that? Oh, favorite old-timer. I'm sorry. We need to qualify that. He does have someone else that's his real favorite. But that's what my life looks like today. So I'm blessed to have a full life. I've retired multiple times, but this time it stuck. And so I'm free to do. We are given a life. I never dreamed that could happen for me. I was a falling down, throwing up, blacked out drunk. I drank every day. I was absolutely miserable, and I could not stop until I found this answer. This answer. There are slogans that we have in AA. We also have some myths. I'm going to talk about the myths for a moment. One of them is you have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And the reason I say that's a myth is because some years back, I was down around Lafayette, and I was talking to a young lady who was real new to the program, had been to detox and gotten out. And she lived in one of those little villas around there, and there was one AA meeting a week in a town that was close enough for her to get to comfortably. Her husband had walked out on her She had small children. She had a piece of a job and a piece of a car. And she said, if I'm going to go to a meeting every day, I'm going to probably have to drive close to an hour to get there, to the next town over. She said, I can't do that. I guess I can't stay sober. Yes, you can, dear. You can stay sober. I know people who stayed sober on one meeting a week. That's not how we do it. It's not 90 meetings in 90 days. It's the God of our understanding. That's one of the myths. And this is my favorite. Take what you want and leave the rest. It's kind of like when somebody asks me to make them a carrot cake, but they don't like carrots, so leave out the carrots. Really? Okay. Then it won't be a carrot cake. Well, yeah, that's a myth. You don't get to choose. See, I tried that. Remember? Step 6 and 7. I'm telling God what to do. Didn't work. 5 years and I'm dying. Okay? There are others that we hear in and out of the rooms. Please be aware of them. If it's not in the big book and the black marks on the white page, it's my opinion or someone else's. We have a lot of people that come out of treatment centers and they hear great stuff or they hear crazy stuff. I don't know. It doesn't matter. We just need to remember that when they get out of wherever they are, where do they come? They send them to us. We get to explain to them what Alcoholics Anonymous is. One of the things that we talk about is living one day at a time. I bought a house not too many years ago. It's a 30-year mortgage. How do you count that as one day at a time? Oh, but I don't pay for it every day for 30 years, do I? I had to learn those little tricks, those little things. And then one of the things that I have you can tell my brain just going, and I have a lot of words, very high word quote I have to use every day. And, but this thing about live in the now. Oh, where do you think I am? But when I look back on my life, I can remember those times when I felt like I was watching a movie. Like I'm standing here and my life is going on out there. It was like I was disconnected or removed from what was going on. I don't know if any of you ever experienced that. But I see a head shaking. It happened to me. I knew my drinking was out of control, but I didn't realize that because of my character defects and the lifestyle I was living and all of the things going, that I felt like I wasn't authentic. I wasn't integrated. I wasn't totally connected to everything. And when y'all said live in the now, whatever. So I promised you a story. Now I'm going to tell you a story. I was taking these two ladies through the steps. This is in New Braunfels. And they came over about 5:30-ish. And I hadn't bought a house yet, still living. I was living in a little duplex. And it was a gated thing, so I had to push the button and open the gate and let them come in. And so I knew that they were on their way to my house, and it was 5. I just walked outside to get some fresh air. And I walked to the edge, and I'm at the edge of the sidewalk, and I happened to look down, and there's ants. Now, it's Texas. They're big. They're not the size of fire ants or sugar ants. They're at least 1/4 of an inch. And there's a line of them that starts further than I can see that they march, just marching. Ants, just marching. All the way that way. And when I look over there, I realize all the knockout roses have not a leaf on them. And I look down, and all the ants coming from that way, going that way, have a piece of leaf that they're holding. My first thought is, how does God get a brain in an ant? So I'm watching these ants, and they're just trudging along, just trudging. Those going to the left are empty-handed. Those going to the right all have a piece of a leaf. I found out later they're called cutter ants. There's a lot of them. So I'm watching them, and here comes one, and he's got a piece of leaf that's at least twice as big as he is. And he's got that thing, and he's wobbling along, and he gets to the expansion joint in the sidewalk, and he falls in. But he doesn't drop the leaf. Did you ever stumble carrying a drink? I might fall down, but by golly, I'm holding that drink. So I decided that's the alcoholic ant, and I'm going to watch him. And he's in this expansion joint, and he is struggling, and he moves one way and then the other, and now he's holding up the line. Okay? All right, so they found a way to get around, and I'm watching this, and eventually he claws his way out, and off he goes on his mission, carrying that big piece of leaf. And at that moment, I understood the power of now. I was completely and utterly, at that moment, connected with God, because there was no other thought in my head. I wasn't worried about yesterday. I wasn't worried about looking good in front of these two women, or what am I going to say, or how I'm going to do this, or what's for supper, or where is my husband, is he late, or if I get another phone call from that. None of that. I was absolutely absorbed at that moment, and it was spiritual to me because it was the power of now. I was integrated. I was completely authentic. That may sound strange to you, but that's what happened to me. And I knew what that was. That was a spiritual experience again. We're so blessed we can have them all the time. Please, people, recognize them. Go find them. Make them happen. And then if you read that logo, it's never mind, it's right there. It says, we trudge the road of happy destiny. Not the road to, the road of. And how do we trudge? Like ants, in a row, all marching to the same thing, coming that way. And if we're empty-handed, we go and we get some more, and then we go this way. And we just live that life, the life that we are blessed to get here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I love you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you very, very much, Glenda. I'd like to remind everybody that we have the Monster Mash dance and costume contest right next door in about 15 minutes. And on your way to it, check out all the great raffle prizes. Now let's close this meeting with usual fashion in the Lord's Prayer. We're not going to try to make a circle because that's one of the things us alcoholics cannot do well, it seems. Yeah, just grab a hand. A moment of silence for the alcohol inside these lines and outside these lines. What comes after LMNOPQR? Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. You come back to work, you work it. And remember the costume contest, we have some fabulous cash prizes and some regular prizes.